run Linen Press, which I founded 17 years ago now in Edinburgh, and we're, as far as I know, the only UK-wide independent women's press, still going strong. Other indie presses pop up and quite a lot of them fold down again, but we're still going really well, with authors coming back to us and new authors coming, and it's very exciting. It's a lovely thing to do. We pick up books, we pick up submissions that probably the big five monopolies would reject. Books with ideas, books about ideas, books that have integrity, and above all, books that are exceptionally well written. I mean, I think that is the absolute criterion. Is the bar is very high. The writing must be really, really good to attract our interest. So we're not very interested in the series with the rather superficial plots and the same characters coming back again and again. And we published literary fiction and life writing, and we're just about to publish our first book of poetry called Tabula Rasa, which will be ready very soon, in about a week. We'll pick up anything, any genre that's really relevant to women and which we feel has something to say to women out there about their lives. Moving on, I've worked with the Whole Kahani quite a long time now, on 2 anthologies. The first was May We Borrow Your Country, and the more recent one is Tongues and Bellies. Both have done really well, and I just want to say it's a pleasure to work with you folk. When you know that, this is a group of very professional writers and women, both writers and women, authors and women. And I've loved having them on board and being on our list. And it's been a pleasure. I've also worked with 2 of them as individual authors, Kavita, whose novel, Manual for a Decent Life, we published. Big book, wonderful book, novel full of ideas, politics and the personal. And Mona Dash, whose very moving memoir we published a while back now. Mona, how many years? 6 years? Not that long, 5 years maybe, 4 or 5 years.
It is 2019, well, 4, almost 4.
4 years, okay, time's racing on.
Yeah.
So I've got to know some of them really very closely, but they're a fantastic group, and I hope tonight they'll both give you some samples of their work and also tell you about the pros and maybe cons, maybe not, of what it's like to be part of a collective, because I don't know of another collective like this. South Asian or not South Asian, I don't know of another group that has held together as long as you have. So I'll hand over to you to explain how it evolves and how it progresses. So first I'm going to hand over to Kavita, who will introduce the readings and the talks. Is that right, Kavita?
Yeah, well, yes and no. Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome this evening. What we thought might do before we talk, I am going to talk a little bit about the collective. In fact, we all are later. But we thought we'd just start with telling you, or not telling you, but reading to you a little bit from this book. Can you all admire the beautiful cover?
Yes.
Tongues and Bellies. And we're going to read, well, 5 of us will read for about 5 minutes, just so you get a flavor. The book is about food and relationships, and just so you get a flavor of the different stories in the books. But I think we'll come back to me later. I'll read in the middle and then I'll talk about the collective. But we'll start with Reshma reading, I think.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Reshma Ruya, and I'm the co-founder along with Kavita of the Whole Kahani Collective. So as was mentioned, we'll be reading tonight from our anthology Tongues and Bellies. And the sort of the leitmotif through this book is about food. So I'll be reading you an excerpt from my story called Meg Kolosky's Birthday Cake. And the story is about a woman, Meg, who finds that she's being betrayed by her husband and how she uses a birthday cake as a tool of revenge. So here's the story. Today, on my 40th birthday, with my mother dead and gone, I bake myself a birthday cake. I drive to Waitrose and load my trolley with organic flour, a dozen eggs, and all the nutty, fruity trimmings to make the perfect cake. I have my mother's recipe memorized back to front. 3 hours later, and the cake is ready in all its jiggly glory. Just before the cake is ready to go into the oven, I slip off my gold wedding band and place it right inside the wobbly heart of the cake. I throw a tablecloth on the kitchen table, light the candelabra, and wear my sequined party frock. I crayon my lips in scarlet lipstick and tease my red hair into an artful mess. Sitting at the table, ready to feast, my mother's words come back floating back to me. There's no need to be greedy. I must share this cake with those who need it most. Gently, I ease the cake into a box, tie it with a silver ribbon, and drive across town to the hotel near the airport. It's easy to find him. Like most lecturers in medieval philosophy, my husband doesn't stray far from the truth. The room is booked under his own name. A special birthday delivery, I assure the harassed receptionist. She waves me towards the lift. I knock on the door of room 215 and shout, "Room service." There's sunshine in my voice. A young girl wearing a toweling robe opens the door and sticks her head out. Her mascara has left footprints over her cheek, and her curly hair is a tangle. "Hello, young lady. I've got you some goodies," I say. "We didn't order anything," she replies in a high-pitched voice. "Well, I think your boyfriend did." It's easy enough to push her aside. She's feather-light. I walk in, carrying my cake like a crown. The room stinks of second-rate love. There lies my husband, propped up against polyester pillows on the bed, his pale thighs and face flushed in post-coital bliss. His corduroy trousers are draped neatly on the back of a chair, and the girl's lacy bra lies on top of his belt. "What? Meg, what the hell are you doing here?" he shouts. His droopy eyes sink down further, making him look like a cartoon. His hands rush down to pull up the beige checked duvet to cover his nakedness. "Just thought I'd share my birthday cake with you." "It's my 40th, and you, naughty boy, you forgot." I tweak his cheek affectionately and place the cardboard box on the bedside table and bring out the cake. Bill's eyes move from the cake to my face. His mouth opens and shuts like a door, but no sound comes out. "Should I call security?" the girl whispers, reaching for the phone, but I'm quicker than her. I yank the telephone from its plugged socket and fling it across the room. "Sit down and don't say a word," I tell her. And she does just that, obedient little student that she is. She sits watching me and wringing her hands. My husband tries to get up, but I push him down and whip aside his duvet so he lies naked and defenseless like a newborn babe. Hitching up my dress, I clamber on top of him, sitting astride him as though he's a horse, pinning him to the bed. I'm intent on feeding him my cake. I lower my knee on his groin and keep his mouth open, my fingers wedged tight against his palate. He's sputtering something. His eyes are watering. One slice, then two, and then a third. I feed him quietly with my free hand. He's making clown faces at me now, round-eyed in fear, his mouth jammed with cake. Green icing dribbles from the side of his mouth. The girl stands by the side of the bed, sobbing, "Please stop, please stop." She repeats again and again. She looks needy and hungry. So I feed her some cake too. There are even leftovers that I take home. Later that night, after showering and getting ready for bed, I go downstairs for one last slice. I'm satiated and complete. The warm feel of my birthday cake snug in my husband's belly. Thank you.
Yeah. So hi, hello everyone. I'm Mona, and I'm going to read from my story, which is called My Baby's Eyes. And Reshma mentioned that there's the sort of theme throughout the collection about food, but there was also a lot about, sort of lies and relationships. So my book sort of misses the food part of it. It goes on the other themes. And this story is about the protagonist is called Uma, and this book starts about her trying to park her car. But as the story progresses, we see that she's got more problems. And in fact, it's sort of a lighthearted manner, but it's at its heart, it's about infertility. My baby's eyes. I'm in a panic. The parking bays are full, and the only available space is between two cars. It means I'll have to attempt a parallel park. I try. Drive alongside the first car, reverse the way I've been taught to, but it doesn't work. And I almost graze the shiny black Audi in front. Then I try to come in at an angle. Drive in and straighten up deftly, but the back of my car sticks out. Maybe I should give up and ask Nick to buy the paints over the weekend. But I can't cope with his face when he hears I wasn't able to parallel park yet again. I drive around and look for another space. Nothing. And here I am, back to where I started. Except that now there's a white delivery van expertly parked. The driver of the van steps out, a tall guy, smiling at me. Has he seen my pathetic attempts to park? Like so many others, like my driving instructor who would sit there shaking his head. I don't understand this. You teach in the college. You must be clever, right? And yet you aren't able to do a maneuver? And Nick, his face contorted, patience running dry, his voice snapping. Steer to the left, left, for God's sake, Uma. Don't you know your right from your left? Sunday afternoon, and he'd be giving me parking lessons in the local Tesco car park. Bay parking, parallel parking, my hands trembling, my brain turning soft. Sometimes I wonder if I'm on the dyspraxia spectrum. I catch the driver's eye, and suddenly he's alongside me. Yes, I roll down my window. You all right? Yes, I am, my voice on edge. Why wouldn't I be? Well, I mean, he shrugs, gesturing at my car, then at the space around. That's when I realize I'm in the way, blocking any vehicle that might come in or want to leave. He wears a white t-shirt and jeans. A dimple flashes on his left cheek. Something about his eyes, so honest, so open. There's no space to park. Maybe if I wait long enough, someone will leave, I explain. Look, miss, there's one right there. Indeed, there is, another tiny spot between two massive SUVs. That's not going to work. He looks at me with such a look of surprise that I blurt. Well, I can't maneuver into that space. I just can't. I see, shrugging again, he walks away. Suddenly he looks back. His hair falls over his forehead, and I smile broadly, thinking how nice he looks. Would you like me to help? There's nothing to lose. Yes, please, will you? I get out of the car, wondering if he meant he'd guide me or park my car. With a quick shrug, he gets in, pushes the seat to accommodate his longer legs and reverses. I relax. It's a beautiful day in spring. The daffodils and snowdrops are out. The magnolia in my garden is in full bloom. On days like this, when everything feels alive, I can believe it will happen, that I can pat my life into a perfect ever after. And he's next to me, handing me the keys. Thank you so much. I'm Uma, by the way. My pleasure, Uma. I'm Charlie. Not often that this happens. I can park my car. Well, usually. That's okay. His eyes take up the smile after it leaves his mouth. Actually, I'm a new driver and I can't park to save my life. I don't know why I tell him this, but my frustration at myself spills out before I can stop it. I see. He stands there in the sun looking at the P plates on my Mini Cooper. He stands there looking at me. I mean, really looking at me. You work here? I know I'm stalling. I'm suddenly curious about him. Such a helpful young man, so courteous. I imagine delivery van drivers were middle-aged, rough, prone to speeding. I do a delivery to Copyright a few times in the week, and you? I'm at Reading University, studying there. You flatter me, I teach. What do you teach? Physics. He whistles. Wow, you're clever. You really flatter me. Thanks again. I need to go, need to get some stuff. I need a bit of a rush. And I need to get the carpets out, get on to the next job. I feel his eyes on me as I walk to the home decor shop. I look back and wave. He waves back. That evening, I think of him. When I tell Nick I've bought the paints, I don't mention my parking debacle. 2 days later, my period arrives, unfailing like the sun in its duty to rise. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kavita, as you know, since I said hello before, and I'm also going to read one of my stories from Tongues and Bellies. And this story is called The Unusual Properties of Cork. That's C-O-R-K, the substance, in case you had anything else running through your head. I told you this story was about food and relationships. In this case, it's about food and friendship and a dinner. So it's set around a particular dinner, which leads to a lifelong friendship. We're sort of at the start of the story, and it's set in London, Sweden, and Portugal. It's a young woman who goes to Sweden to a very special restaurant with someone who's actually just a gym friend and that she doesn't know very well. He invites her at the last minute because he's broken up with his girlfriend, and he's had this reservation for months, and he really doesn't want to go to this restaurant. So she goes along with him, and here it's the setup to the evening. They've arrived in Sweden. We arrived at Faviken in the transcendent light of a Nordic evening, having driven for 6 hours from Stockholm, talking about the scenery en route and guessing what would be on the menu for dinner. We were shown to our rustic room, which Afonso had chosen when he'd booked. He didn't want to be driving or taxiing to a nearby town after his wine-matched feasting. There were only a handful of rooms in the restaurant's own lodgings, and they were all the same. 2 single beds, each hugging a wall, and a furry rug on the floor between. The ends of our beds hit the small window, round like a porthole, from which we could spy on the path leading to the restaurant. Our fellow diners were already heading to the restaurant patio to gather for drinks. We'd been given the time of 7 p.m. to assemble. Dinner service would start then. We took turns to dress for dinner. Afonso went on ahead, European, smart, casual, pale colors, and looking just right. I got in a muddle, deciding what to do with my messy hair, and so arrived a bit late. I'd settled for a low ponytail tied with a green crushed velvet scrunchie. My dress was black, splashed with yellow irises. As I stepped onto the veranda, staff began ushering guests into the dining room. They'd been waiting for me. I got the impression that the restaurant ran to a strict schedule. That impression settled into confirmation as the evening wore on. We diners may have been paying big money for a world-famous restaurant and fancy schmancy dishes, but we were being treated a bit like school children. No deviating from what we were expected to do, which, funnily enough, was to follow firm orders. Afonso and the other diners didn't seem to mind, but I found it amusing. I enjoyed disregarding the head waiter's pronouncements, just occasionally, but enough to irk him. It also irked Afonso, which wasn't my intention. But then it was probably not Afonso's intention to bore me, but he did. Not with the food or the magnificent wines or the restaurant itself or the whole experience, but with his courteous insistence on answering my silly question, what are you passionate about? Cork. He answered so fully between courses, of which there were 13, that I had plenty of time to overdrink while I listened. Cork. His family in Portugal farmed it for generations. I can tell you a lot about cork. It's up to you how much to believe of what I say. It is indestructible, did you know? It is vegan, yes. You can send it to the moon and aliens will return it to us one day. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Nadia. I'll be reading from Stranger in the Mirror. When we talk about tongues and bellies, I always think about the fact that, we use our tongues to talk and to taste. We tell the truth and we tell lies, and i.e. therefore forked tongues. And also we may eat to fill our bellies, but also that's where we keep our secrets. So Stranger in the Mirror is a story where my protagonist, Amer, finds that a perceived lie or a perceived secret completely destroys his understanding of who he is or his reality as he's seen it so far. So I will read from Stranger in the Mirror. The photograph on the table showed a slender young woman in a blue floral shirt and jeans, gazing up at the man next to her, a smile on her lips. The man was laughing, his head tilted back, arm resting on her shoulder. There was something intimate about the way she was looking at him. I felt like a voyeur, an intruder. The woman, my mother, looked carefree, vibrant, and most importantly, happy, an emotion I had only seen in bursts and flashes. I remembered a woman whose smile didn't quite reach her eyes, a sadness in them I had never entirely understood. I placed the photo down on the table and rubbed my temple. The image of the two of them was seared into my brain. There was an inscription on the back written in a bold hand, though the ink had faded over time. Always yours, Adam. The man in the picture wasn't my father. He was a curly-haired man with dark eyebrows over smiling hazel eyes. If I hadn't gone into my parents' bedroom after the funeral, I would never have found the photograph. It slipped from my hand, the back of the frame coming loose when it fell on the floor. The photograph had been tucked inside. It was strange to think that more than 6 weeks had passed since the accident. When I arrived at the hospital, the woman at the reception had directed me where to go. The doctor who spoke to me had the careworn face of someone who had seen too much pain and suffering. He informed me that a lorry had skidded on the motorway and plowed into their car. My mother had been killed instantly by the impact, and my father hadn't regained consciousness after the crash. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mr. Rashid. The information had been imparted with just the right balance of sympathy and calm. It was clearly not the first time he had given this kind of speech. My legs buckled. The doctor steadied me and led me to a chair. DOA, dead on arrival. And with those 3 words, I was an orphan. Arguably, orphan was a term that could no longer be applied to me. After a certain age, you cease to be an orphan and become parentless. At the age of 24, however, orphaned is exactly how I felt. Losing both parents at the same time was something I never imagined I would have to confront. Identifying them was a cold and impersonal process, incongruous with how I felt. The sight of their lifeless bodies is an image I will never be able to erase. For days, I walked around in a fog, my brain numb. I'm not sure I could have dealt with the situation if it wasn't for Zia Chacha, my father's younger brother. As soon as he heard the news, he packed his bags and his family into their battered but dependable Volkswagen Passat and drove down from Birmingham. My dadi, Dad's mother, had died when he was still in school, and my dada passed away a couple of years ago. Since then, it had been just the two of them. Don't worry about a thing, Amer, he said as he embraced me, patting me awkwardly on the back. Displays of physical affection made him uncomfortable, reminding me of Dad. I'll sort out the funeral and burial arrangements. I could only nod in thanks. At the time, I didn't even stop to think how hard it was for him having just lost his brother. The janaza service took place at the local mosque, and never having been particularly devout, I was at a loss as to what the formalities and rituals were. Neither of my parents had been particularly observant either. I had only attended a couple of janazas when friends of mum and dad had died, but had just copied everyone else at the mosque. Afterwards, I told mum it was a bit like playing Simon Says, only in this case, it was the Imam says. I remember her trying hard not to laugh and telling me off half-heartedly for my irreverence. I had abdicated responsibility without a moment's hesitation and was ashamed of how relieved I had been accepting my uncle's offer to shoulder the burden. Saira Chachi, his equally efficient wife, had taken charge of looking after all the people who came to pay their respects, and for a while, the house had hummed with life.
Hello, I'm Zablina, and I will read from my story Lost for Words, which is set in a dystopian near future, where amongst other strange new rules, people are taxed for speaking more than their government-allotted quota of 10,000 words per month. In this world, our unnamed protagonist grapples with past loss, new possibilities, and visceral memories of food and love. Something about her caused a flicker, like a candle flame in a darkened room, as he went about his evening routine in automation. The steak grilled to medium rare accuracy in 3 minutes, 12 seconds. The beans blanched in the pan. The potatoes steamed in the cooker. He didn't know what it was. Maybe it was her, but today felt like a sauce kind of day. In the kitchen, what he was unable to do with words, he made up for with his hands. He found the eggs, lemons, vinegar, and salt in silent harmony. The soft crack of the shells released the yolks into the bowl, and the hand frother whipped the ingredients into a golden frenzy. Somewhere in the far recesses of the kitchen cabinet, he unearthed a long-forgotten jar of poblano peppers, still preserved thanks to the glug of oil in which they floated. They got blitzed in the blender and joined the fresh mayo, creating a rich ochre emulsion. "What culinary bastard have you birthed today?" Pamela would have laughingly asked. She was always amazed at his ability to mix unlikely ingredients into likable concoctions. Now, these kitchen conjurings had become a proxy for expressing dormant feelings, a shorthand to a lost past. As he settled into his dinner and spooned the rich sauce over his spare, rare steak, tastes, smells, and desires came seeping back into his consciousness. That's how little it took. Freshly blitzed mayo with preserved peppers. In the world he was born into, ordinary was a pejorative term, bordering on mild abuse. Ordinary was the specter of an interminable stretch of nothing, except that ordinary is temporary. And when it leaves, it doesn't announce its departure with grand symbols and cacophony. It just slides off like sheets from naked sleeping bodies. When he tried to remember the old, ordinary days with Pamela and Rolf as a family, his memories flattened into pancakes. The past and further past blended to create static cameos. Pamela, loose-limbed, smiling, her love for black in contrast with her cheery persona. Ralph, with his mop of hair falling sideways in a neat triangle. His own postdoctorate, her startup, Ralph's nursery, pudgy sandcastles flanked by bright orange shovels and buckets during their summer breaks. They had become silent tableaus in the diorama of his past. Had it only been 15 years? As he was drawn to Ruby and waited to spend a few minutes listening to her chatter or walking her to the air train, these past memory tableaus started to change. New textures, dimensions, and edges spread into his dreams. There he was, holding Ralph's soft, warm hands at the airport before he boarded the flight to Calcutta to go to his mother, who had broken her hip and contracted a chest infection all at the same time. "Daddy, will you please make me jamba rice when you come back?" He smiled despite himself. There was something to be said for genetic material popping up in the oddest of places. His instinct of cooking had taken the Caribbean jambalaya of their honeymoon and tossed it with smoked sausages, okra, eggs, and soy sauce to create a Sino-Portuguese Caribbean mashup that Pamela had laughed at while scarfing it down. And jamba rice had become a family staple, cooked for comfort, celebration, reassurance, and everything in between. But at the airport, bidding reassuring temporary adieus, they hadn't known that there would be no more jamba rice for their family. Even then, the lurgy was creeping around the world and shutting down countries like extinguished streetlights. He stayed suspended with his ill mother halfway across the world, separated from Pamela, who sent assurances that she and Ralph were fine. But as borders sealed like Paravi on envelopes, Ralph fell sick. Just a slight fever, Pamela said cheerfully, even as everything around them wobbled like secondhand furniture. In a surreal parallel, his mother slid gently down the slopes of consciousness, her breath heaving, her papery palms trembling leaf-like in his hands. Thank you.
So I think it's back to me now. Lynn has asked me to speak a little bit about our workshopping ethos and method. I'm one of the co-founders along with Reshma Ruya, as we said earlier. First of all, I think our ethos is that we try to be supportive and constructive in everything we do. Try is, of course, the operative word. We usually workshop shorter pieces or extracts. The group is an understanding space to try out new things and be experimental, should we wish to do so. We write about whatever we want to, because of course, when you write for something outside of us, you may be asked to write within certain boundaries, but within us, we can write about, as you heard, in fact, about anything, anywhere, anytime, whatever you like. The reason we're an understanding space is because we have a shared background in two ways. We all live in the UK, and our heritage and ethnicity is South Asian. We actually cover a broad sweep of the region. We're not from similar traditions, languages, or religions, but of course, the cultural implications of both the UK and this region of Asia are part of us and part of what we know. And sometimes it appears in the context of our writing. And so there's less explaining to do within the group when we're presenting new work. So I'm sure you all know that feeling of, an understanding community, and we have it for all our cultural sides and facets, you could say. A little bit about our method. We aim to, first of all, highlight what worked for us in a piece. So these are our little rules. As readers, we all like different things. So the feedback is, of course, personal, and no one is trying to lie. But the rule is to be kind to start with, to highlight what works for you before you point out what doesn't work and possibly offer suggestions. In this way, the writer gets a range of comments because we don't all have the same view. I mean, sometimes it's the same words and phrases that, somebody loves and somebody hates. But that's normal, as anyone who's been in a workshop will tell you, that's normal. So after that, it's up to the writer who's presented the piece to consider what they want to do with all the comments, what fits with their piece, what they want to think about, because, in the end, they know what they're aiming for. So in that sense, we're very loose, but we're just there to be supportive and constructive. I think that's enough about the group. I think Lynn had some questions for us, which is about the collective more generally.
Thank you, Kavita. It's really interesting. As I said, I don't know another collective, not the way I know you. And I mean, you really are a shining example. I should just say to everyone listening, aren't they wonderful readers? Not only are they talented authors, but they read so well. And I remember the launch of Tongues and Bellies, and each stood up. There was not a single stumble, not a word wrong. They're just such a professional group of authors and women. So I think it's really, this collective is strong. It's been going a long time. And I want to ask you all the same question. I may get the same answers back, but I don't think so. So I'm going to go in reverse order from the reading and ask you, what do you get out of this collective? How does it work for you? And what does it mean for you? Because, writing is a very solitary business. I find it not just solitary, but lonely. And what you're bringing here to one another is collaboration and listening, as all the things that Kavita has said, sympathetic, constructive context. So and you've been going a long time, so I just wanted to ask each of you what it means to be part of this group. So let me go in reverse order, as we said. So Deblina, can you say something about what it's meant for you to be part of the Whole Kahani?
Absolutely. I should tell you that I accosted them at the book reading of their first anthology, Love Across a Broken Map. And I was so inspired by the group that I went up to them and I said, please have me. They were very kind and they agreed. And it's been one of the best decisions of my life to accost strangers. I think in addition to everything Kavita said, I think for someone like me personally, it brings accountability. I have a crazy job and I also like my 8 hours of sleep, and I'm often rushed off my feet. And as you said, writing is lonely. And if you don't have benchmarks and goalposts, you can very easily just keep procrastinating and never do anything. I think I still procrastinate with the best intentions, but being part of the Whole Kahani gives structure and gives accountability along with the sounding board and the feedback and something to work towards. So for me, that's absolutely invaluable. And of course, I think also seeing everyone else's style and getting positively inspired. It's not about copying, but it's about how you can almost hone it. It's a positive influence in that you see everyone's style and that makes you want to do it better in whatever your own style is. So it's a very positive halo effect for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
So, and they accepted you. You went along and asked, and they took you in.
Yes, I had to give in writing samples, and then I had to wait with nail-biting anxiety, but they were very kind and they accepted me.
Good.
Can I just add? In fact, that was today, by the way. It was on 25th January.
At the library.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
got
That's
the
the
library.
anniversary.
I got a
The
picture.
reading. Oh, you mean the reading that we had?
The reading.
Yes, at the library.
At the library.
Oh, how lovely. That was serendipity, wasn't it?
January 2016, I think. So it came up on my
Exactly.
memory today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Nadia, will you give me an answer too, please?
Would you actually believe that I did exactly the same thing at the library on the same day? And I saw them reading and I was like, are you taking any more members? And then I went through the same process as Deblina. So, you know, I think being there was, I think, like Deblina said, the best decision I'd ever done, actually gone to the readings there. But actually, what I do find is sometimes people ask me whether being part of a collective is a hindrance, actually, you know, because you're working with so many people, so many personalities. But I always say I'm a massive Trekkie, so being part of a collective like the Borg Collective really appeals to me in a positive way, you know. But actually, if you think about us as the 5 of us here, actually, apart from all of us being British of South Asian descent, we are all completely different, you know, in what we write, different as writers, you know, starting from our styles of writing, the themes that we look at, the characters we portray. I mean, we are just completely, you know, different in every aspect. And I think immense diversity within the group. And even if you take the themes that we talk about, whether it's May We Borrow Your Country or Tongues and Bellies, we all look at it from different angles. We don't, otherwise we'd have very, very similar stories. But as you can see, they're not. And I think, you know, you learn by reading and working with writers who are different to you, but then again, very similar because we have similar sensibilities. So it's really wonderful being able to work in what I would call a safe space. It's like a safety net where you get the ability to explore and experiment without judgment. You will be critiqued, but you know, you won't get away with just writing whatever. People will tell you what they think, but it will be done sort of, you know, not in a way to put you down or put your writing down, to make you better. And I can't, you know, that can only be a good thing. And also, I have to say that I think one of the reasons why we are going strong is because we go beyond this professional sort of Whole Kahani writers collective, because we're actually all friends, and we have to become friends. When you have a genuine friendship and we meet outside the meetings, you know, we socialize, and it's a massive support system. And I think that is what is unique actually about the Whole Kahani, to be honest.
That's nice, because there might be a tendency for people listening in to think you're more similar because you're South Asian, and you're not.
Really not.
Not
really
at all.
Not, no.
And I know from editing your writing how very individual you are, both as people and as writers. So there's both this, yes, we are South Asian, but we are also very, very different people and writers. So I'm glad you made that point, made it explicit. I mean, it just sounds wonderful to me. I'm jealous. You jealous, Kate? I think it's
yeah.
So Kavita, do you want to say first just 2 words about how you founded it and how this came into being?
Yes, so I don't know how many years ago now, Reshma and I were both published in an anthology.
11 years ago, nearly 11 years.
Yes, called Too Asian, Not Asian Enough. And in fact, that anthology, I really think that title, I still think it's the best title, is very interesting, particularly to Asian people, is because it came out of the fact that publishers looked at the writing of, and things have moved on. I'm talking about more than 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Things have moved on. Publishers either said, oh yes, we need to have color in your books, and, you know, like the color I've got behind me and things like that. And if we wrote something about drab London, they were like, well, this isn't Asian enough, and we want a bit more like evocative. And then if you did write, as I did in Manual for a Decent Life, so in my short stories, actually, they're often set in London, but as you know, my novel was set very much so in India and did not move out of there. And if you did that, they said, well, no, why don't you write about someone who came to London and then, you know, went back to India? And, you know, so they wanted everything, but not what you wanted to write. And the editor of that anthology said, so the reason they called it, that was the reason they called it, you either being too Asian or not Asian enough. But she said, write whatever you want. And it was an anthology, a large anthology of many people. But Reshma and I met at the launch of that, or because we were in that. And from that, a group sprung up that, as you say, did fall away. It was more people. And it went on for a little while, and then it fell away. But then Reshma lives in Manchester and I live in London. And she said to me, but we should keep meeting and we should broaden the group. And I said, yes, do it, because I wanted her to do the job. I said, that's fine, good idea, Reshma, can you do it? And she said, no, I'm not doing it if you don't do it with me. And I said, oh, okay, all right. And so that's how we set up. And then we had people join and people leave, but obviously the group is still continuing. It's been a while, so it's been great. For me, what it means, apart from obviously being the co-founder of the collective, I mean, I also meant it, and I have to say that has come true. I have said it in some other forums, that I meant it as a template for what people can do. It's for, you know, do it for yourself. We can't have everybody in the group, but people can set up their own, and in fact now people have. So that has happened. We're not the only, you know, collective out there, but or this kind of collective out there. But of course, because you can only manage so many people. So I wanted to be a template so that people could keep doing that. But for me, what it means really in terms of writing, well, more than writing, a little bit of what Nadia said is that I'm very happy when I meet these talented women. I'm happy in their company. So that's important to me. You know, guys, you make me happy. And then, from what Devlina said, so I'm a great procrastinator too, or I don't call it that. I say something like, I get very distracted with all the loads of things I have to do. That's my way of saying it, Devlina. But actually, I get motivated to write something, even if it's very short, if there's a future meeting. So often it gives me a chance to air something that might be very rough that I'm just thinking about. But so even though I may not have started that particular piece, if we have a meeting, I might actually start it. It functions as a deadline. I have to say I don't always finish, but it's a really good push.
Thank you. I like that. I like that word template. But I should also say that templates, they can work and they cannot work. This one works. And you have more than proved it over the last 10 years. And maybe other collectives begin and don't really gel or whatever. But this template's going really strong. There's something about you folk that you just relate to one another, don't you? Something about you that holds you together. And it may be what you said, Deblina, that you actually like both the writing and you like the people, you like the women.
Absolutely. I think there's such mutual respect. I think we come in, we've always noticed that we always discuss. I can personally say that there's such an unspoken code of respect. And even if we don't agree, I think the main aim is always to get to consensus.
Yeah.
It's respect over ego. And I think if you had to ask what makes it last, I would probably say that in most things, ego gets in the way, and touch wood. So far, I think for us, respect has trumped ego.
Okay, let me move on to Mona. Do you want to give your version, Mona? What is it for you?
Sure. I mean, I just echo, I think, what everybody said, so many things which I completely agree with. So I think what I'll say different, I mean, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the journey, because everyone's talking, has mentioned a little bit about that. So I think looking at the group now, I'm probably like the third member after Reshma and Kavita. And the way it actually came about for me was in the very early days. I think it was, I'd met Kavita in a poetry reading and handed a story of mine, which had just got published in the college anthology. I was doing my creative writing course and it was published in the anthology, and I gave her a copy. I'm not sure how that happened, but anyway, I did that. And the next thing she knows was we've got this, we're thinking of this collective. Do you think you'd like to join? And she told me about the Whole Kahani. And for me at that point, I was really actively looking for writing groups, because I wanted to, I was in fact going to the London Writers Club circle. And so for me, it was like, wow, this is first of all a group where I can workshop, because I think I was really actively looking for workshopping. And the second thing, of course, was the path, there was a publishing path to it as well, which is because we were working on the first anthology, Love Across a Broken Map. So I was like, wow. And at that point, I was literally starting publishing I'd not published much at all. So that's where it started for me. And I think everything I've got along the way was not what I had at all expected. So I've got more than I ever thought I would joining the group, because I write a lot of poetry. I write full-length work as a novel and memoir, as you know. But the short story part in my head is like, I write something and like, okay, I'm going to get this workshop by the group. And once they've said it, I'm good. Once we got, because someone mentioned diversity, and I think everyone gives a different perspective of the story. Yeah. Everyone has a different strength. Might be running out of time, but yeah, just, somebody, Kavita will point out a fact, Reshma will point out the writing style. So that's like everyone says something or the other, and Deblina will say, oh no, this was it. There was something like this in the other book. Have you read it? Nadia will give her, sort of a practical thing about how the structure is. So yeah, everybody has a different thing to say. Yeah. And I think that really helps. And of course, the friendship, I don't want to keep hopping on that, but that's obviously very special.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mona. Okay, let me move on to Reshma. You co-founder there with Kavita.
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty much summed up my sentiments. But so, when I co-founded the collective with Kavita, as we said, it was actually quite a challenge. We wanted to challenge the establishment in a way, the literary establishment, because there was this whole sort of perception, like some of them, some of them, Kavita and Deblina, etc., mentioned, there's a perception that there's a single Asian voice. But what we wanted to show was there's a variety of voices, and it's a myth that there's one. You have to write in a certain way. We all came to the writing from a different, literary tradition. We have our own literary voices, as you have seen, when you've edited our works. And we're all at different stages of our writing journey. Yeah. And what as personally as a writer, I find, of course, I'm the only one who lives outside London, so pre-COVID, I made a commitment that, look, this collective has to survive. We need to meet in person, and I can't expect everybody else to schlep up north. So it's me, I have to go. So, religiously we meet, we used to meet once a month. And I would take the train, and literally come for one day, actually come on a Sunday. So because I think, and the reason I was so, the reason I still am so dedicated to it, because I think we have something to offer, as you said, and I've seen that, when we take our work across different, platforms, we've now participated in literary festivals, given interviews, appeared on radio, and everybody's surprised that, here's this collective who actually, on paper shouldn't really be there, in the sense because of all the challenges, and our sort of, the durability is a testament to how we operate together as a group. And it doesn't go, it goes beyond the sort of critical, of course, we all, critique each other's work. We learn from each other's work as well, and it helps us to grow as a writer, because as everybody has said, writing is such a solitary, lonely occupation, and this is one way of breaching that, forming a bridge with other writers. And also, and we've become friends now. We are each other. There's no sort of competitive spirit, we are each other's cheerleaders, and I think we'll go from strength to strength, really. We've had our ups and downs, I mean, during COVID, it was a challenging time. And as you're aware, Tongues and Bellies was brought out during the COVID period. I don't know how, we sort of workshopped on Zoom, and somehow, brought the whole thing together. And now we are looking ahead to our next anthology. So, I think the future's bright. I hope, and I hope we can all grow old together, disgracefully.
Oh, sounds really good. I just sound so wonderful as the way you work, and the trust you have in each other, and as you say, the respect that you feel. So I'm conscious of time. We've only got 5 minutes for questions, Kate. Do you want to take over and see if we've got any questions from the audience? Anyone want to ask anything of the Whole Kahani? If you'd like. Yeah, let me hand over to you, Kate.
Yeah, just to say thank you so much, everyone. That was such an interesting hour. I really enjoyed it. So we've got one question that's come in. Question for Deblina. I followed her writing for years and greatly enjoyed her non-fiction column and essays. I was curious how the transition to fiction has been for her, and how different it is for her, creatively speaking, between writing the two. Also, which one do you enjoy more? That's from Rocky.
Which one I can do easily is the non-fiction. Fiction is bloody hard, but it's very rewarding. And I realized I had no formal training, and again, I had no time to get formal training. So being in TWK is actually, in a way, also literally a learning workshop for me of how to work through narrative, work through structure, and what I'm making does that work, or is it completely off piece? It's funny because I'm an avid and voracious reader, but it doesn't translate that easily to being an effortless fiction writer. So it is very hard. My learned behavior is writing columns and observations and essays. So TWK in that sense is invaluable, because when I said I really want to, try my hand at this and do it, because I do like writing and I love stories, and I didn't have the time to enroll into a creative writing course, unlike Mona, who we all envy for how much she multitasks and how brilliantly. TWK has been sort of that in between, the learning ground, that learn as you do sort of space, and I'm very grateful for it.
Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat. Or if not, I've got a question. I was wondering, where do you see, you talked about what you've been working on, and what it's been like working in a collective, but where do you see it going in the future? Have you got any exciting projects coming up, or anything different that you want to try in the future? Do you want to see more members joining? How do you see it going?
I think I'd like to see it get back on track, because as Reshma said, you know, over the pandemic, we haven't actually been able to meet, and we haven't still started meeting regularly in person yet. So it would, I mean, obviously there should be lots of dreams for the future, but the first step is really to get back on track into everybody writing and managing to meet, and then we'll move on to doing something with that writing. And we have some themes floating around, but again, we do it best when we actually meet. I think Deblina said by consensus, so we do it best when we get together and thrash out, this is what we're going to do, which is a bit like we did for Tongues and Bellies. You know, we were writing different things, and then we said, well, maybe the overall, because it's a very broad theme. And of course, it wasn't even called Tongues and Bellies then. It was food was, you know, sort of the theme. So yes, we have, I mean, I don't think I have anything that I can divulge, but I think it would be best to get back on track and go back to that way of working. But maybe the others have plans I don't know about.
No, I think I agree with Kavita. I think consistency is very important, and commitment actually. And within the collective, we have like a division of labor within, you know, we have a treasurer. So it's run as quite a professional organization in a way. And the sooner we develop this sort of a regular rhythm of meeting every month and discussing, because in terms of ideas and themes, you know, I think all of us have tons of ideas floating around, and it's only when we meet in person and have some sort of consensus that we can see, you know, it coming to fruition, really.
Can I ask you one other question? You're so well in tune with one another and so established. How does somebody from outside, how do you deal with somebody approaching you and wanting to join now? Because maybe in the early stages you were more open and fluid or not. And now, because you have publications under your belt, you know how to work together. Is it, I mean, I know you have had someone come quite recently.
Yeah, Khadija, I think.
Yes. How would that span out? Somebody
I know
wanting
it can
to join
appear
you.
It can appear quite daunting, of course, to an outsider, because obviously they see us and they see the intimacy and the level of comfort we have and the ease we have with each other. But I think, as you know, I'm sure Kavita will add to that, but you know, our process is quite sort of transparent. You know, if you go on our website, there's ways of, you know, you have to submit a written piece, and again there'll be a consensus. I think everybody has to agree that they feel comfortable with the person, you know, who wants to, the potential member who would like to join. And we are open to, you know, new members. Definitely, I think we are at the moment.
Lynn, you made a very good point.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it is daunting for new people, but it's also daunting for us, because what you made a good point about it is where the level of where we are now. So actually, we would probably you know, need to look at, which is why I said template for different strokes for different folks, in a way that we would need to look at somebody who was published, who knew how to be professional within a group, who had the time and energy to commit to certain tasks, because, you know, you can't have 5 people doing everything, for example, when you're 8 people or 9 people or whatever. So and that is daunting from both sides, but maybe more from the other side, because I think I have some long strict rules that sound very strict, but in fact it's not to scare people away, it's to tell them this is what this is going to pan out like. So I think we need to ourselves start meeting more, and then when we have new people, there is a process, and when we work through, we have kept fine-tuning that process over the years, and we'll probably further tweak it because of the points you made, because of where we are now. We probably have to get people in who can match with us.
I think that's important. Yeah.
And also there's a membership fee as well now, you know, it's
Yeah.
not a free, you know, in order to, you know, we have to maintain the website and in terms of funds needed for marketing and but to keep the whole thing moving forward, you know, there's a commitment,
I can see it would work.
financial and intellectual.
It would work both ways, Reshma, in that, yes, you're all very close now and you know one another through and through.
Yeah.
But maybe somebody coming in could also bring a new perspective.
Of
or
course, yeah. We need a new spark. Yeah, it could be a new.
Actually, they bring in new energy and ways of doing things, and they have different skills from those of us you know, who are there. So it does work both ways, but it just has to be a complementary relationship, I suppose, and that there's no way to find out. So actually, I feel bad when we do turn down people. There's no way to find out till somebody gives you their resume and their writing. We won't know whether they, you know, they feel on paper at least whether they're complimentary or not, you know. So,
and even after that, they might look fine on paper, but then you have to find out if they really will work.
Yes,
live with you.
And they don't know, and we don't know. Which is why I said, I mean, I hope the ethos is we try to be supportive and constructive and kind, because we know it's difficult. It can be difficult for everybody. So there's no, you know, people should be able to see if it works for them or not. It's not a problem.
No.
Well, I think we're going to have to tie up now, Kate, don't you? It's been really interesting listening to you. I mean, listening to you, you can hear that they know each other really well. There's no hesitancy
too well
between
at
you.
times.
Too well.
And Lynn, so do you. Thanks to you for
thank
your
you.
support.
Yeah,
I mean,
Thank you very much.
you
Yeah,
were the 11th member or 9th member.
the honorary member.
Yeah.
Honorary lifelong member.
Yes, and
wonderful.
Thank you for everyone who was here. And
sorry, there's another question.
Oh yes, what's the question? Yes, go on, Nadia. Go on.
Sorry, what's my notice? Yeah. I think writing from the male perspective, I think some of us actually tend to do that quite a lot, and it isn't easy, because obviously you have to make the voice authentic. You don't want to sound like it's a caricature of what you think a man should sound like, and you really, I think it's with any character, you have to put yourself in that character's shoes. You have to, as they say, walk a mile in their shoes. And so whatever character it is, you really have to think about how would they react to certain situations. You know, your particular character, I've written about a middle-aged man. This is a young man of, 24, so it'd be very different. And I think the main thing is observation. I think the greatest tool a writer can have is the power of observation. So you just observe how people behave and react, and you pick up on that, and then you just use it. I think it's not easy, but then again, I actually find I'm quite comfortable writing from the male perspective. So you'll find a lot of my stories are from the male perspective. And I actually enjoy it. I think it gives me variety of writing from sort of both sides. So I actually enjoy it. So I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you so much. I think we should wrap it up there, but it was a really interesting talk, and it's so great to see you get along so well together. And it seems you've got it all figured out. And thank you to everyone for joining as well. Just to let you know that we are running these types of events on a monthly basis, so please keep an eye out on our Eventbrite page and on our social media to stay up to date with future events. And if you do want to purchase a copy of one of the Whole Kahani's collections, Tongues and Bellies, for example, I'm just going to put a link in the chat to our online shop. If I could kindly ask for you to, there it is in all its glory. Ask you to buy it from there and not from any third-party websites. That would be amazing, because that allows us to make a small profit. And And yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you once again, Kavita, Mona, Nadia, Reshma, and Deblina, and Lynn, of course. And yeah, I hope you all
Thank
have
you.
a lovely
Thank you.
evening.
Kate,
Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you,
Thank
Kate.
you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
everyone for joining.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks
for
so
joining.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
It's
you.
so nice to see you tonight.
Thank you.
Take
you,
care.
Lynn.
Bye-bye.
Good luck,
luck with
good
the
luck in the future,
Good
and we'll be in touch again.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.